From the sacrifice it took to give us the Iron Man to a real-life Marvel tragedy, these are the saddest deaths in the Marvel Universe revealed. To me, the most painful character deaths are the ones that are in sacrifice, or ones that just felt like they didn't deserve to die. Oh man, are there a lot of these kinds of deaths in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? But it makes sense to start with a story about Iron Man. Tony Stark, as the Iron Man, was really the hero that brought the whole franchise and the Avengers together. But Tony Stark would for sure be dead if it wasn't for Ho Yinsen. Ho Yinsen met Tony Stark while they were both held hostage in a cave by the Ten Rings. Yinsen was a very smart inventor and helped Tony Stark escape, while sharing his hopes to reunite with his family. They secretly built a suit of armor together, the very first janky, clanky Iron Man. But they weren't going to have enough time. In an effort to buy Tony more time, Yinsen grabs a gun and runs into the oncoming men, firing off and trying to buy as much time as he could for Tony to turn on the suit and escape. He sacrifices his life and his chance to see his family again, to give the world one of its greatest champions. Guardians of the Galaxy was one of my favorite MCU films, and I've got to say it was mostly because of Groot. Groot could do no wrong. He was not only silly and adorable, he was incredibly loyal to his friends. He had no sins, which is why it was even more devastating how he passed away. When the Guardians get trapped on a ship that is going down fast, Groot quickly grows his entire body to create a barrier around his friends, protecting them with a soft-spoken, "I am Groot." Rocket's expression at seeing the remains of Groot speaks volumes on what the little tree meant to them and all of us. This next one is a doozy. Captain America Civil War's Captain Peggy and Steve Rogers was the romance that should have, but never did. Steve Rogers volunteered to land in ice to stop a plane full of deadly bombs and woke up 70 years later. Talk about being late for a date. He wakes to find Peggy was struggling with memory loss and kept forgetting that he had returned to life and already had a family and a full life. During the events of Civil War, we understand that Peggy passes away and the sight of Steve carrying her coffin is just too tragic. It makes you wonder if the trade-off superpowers really are worth it at all. What is the cost of power? Loki is one of those characters that dance on the line of good and bad, and we just absolutely eat it up. Most of his life we see a selfish god who time after time betrays his comrades and family to get ahead. But as we go close to Infinity War, we see Loki become a genuine hero. He helped save the lives of tons of Asgardians, but then he came face to face with Thanos, which, if you remember, Loki used to work for. Loki had the chance to live if he joined Thanos again. But in a surprising change of character, Loki gives everything to attempt to kill the Titan. But he fails, and we have to watch the very slow and harrowing death as Thanos chokes the life out of Loki in a very unexpected turn of events. Spider-Man: No Way Home did the unimaginable. Our favorite Aunt May was always supportive of Peter in his quest to be the friendly neighborhood hero. Her support never wavered, even when she tried to stop Green Goblin from slaying Peter and instead gets a blow to the head, which at first we think she survives, until she finally falls and we have to witness one of the most heart-wrenching situations. We had to watch Spider-Man lose Uncle Ben at least 3 different times, and now you're going to take away the one constant in Peter's life. We were devastated. Talking about family loss that wasn't nearly as honorable, let's talk about Gamora in Avengers: Infinity War. When Gamora was a child, Thanos killed half of her people before adopting her as his own daughter. Throughout the franchise, we can clearly see that while Gamora grew to resent Thanos, Thanos grew to love Gamora deeply. He loved her so much that when he had to throw a loved one off a cliff in exchange for the Soul Stone, Gamora was the only option. It was heartbreaking to watch as she tried to fight back, but Thanos is a huge dude. Ultimately, Thanos overpowers her and succeeds in throwing her off the edge. Gamora's expression was priceless, one that would haunt us for sure. Knowing that Gamora had been a captive to Thanos basically all her life, only to be sacrificed for his messed up vision for the world. It just felt so unfair. So let's set things right, with one of the most noble but equally heartbreaking deaths. Natasha Romanoff in Avengers: Endgame, 5 years after Thanos ended countless lives, the work to bring the victims back with Infinity Stones. Natasha and her close friend Clint choose to get the Soul Stone, and we all know what you have to give in exchange for it. Well, the worst part is, Natasha and Clint both love each other and both spend the scene that seems to last forever, trying to throw themselves off the cliff to save the other's life. Clint and Natasha fight to choose who will make the sacrifice. A part of me believed that maybe it was the Soul Stone's test, and since they were both so loyal and so willing to be selfless, that it would let them both live. But no, the MCU is not so merciful. In the end, Natasha overcomes Clint and asks him to let her go. When he tries to hold on, Natasha makes the ultimate sacrifice and forces him to drop her to her death. Remembering it is even too much for me. Next, Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the most beloved films in the MCU franchise and personally my very own favorite. But Yondu was a pretty unlikable and kind of a quirky villain. Until Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Yondu, in the beginning, was nothing close to an ideal father. He kidnapped Peter at a young age and forced him into a life of crime. And we think, wow, if only Peter knew his real father. But then we realize Peter's real father is a psycho. Then we understand that Yondu kept Peter away from his crazy father for 2 decades, until Star-Lord meets his biological father and tries to stop his planet-destroying plans. Yondu helps Peter escape by carrying him into space with a jetpack on, and only one spacesuit. Both of them need to breathe, but Yondu sacrifices his suit and his life to let Peter live. The entire theater was in tears as we sat in the silence of the aftermath. One of my favorite and most touching scenes in the entire franchise. And on the father note, Tony Stark Avengers Endgame. This was a death I never expected and was not prepared for. Honestly, Marvel hit me with a lot of these in the final movie of the Avengers. The theater really should have been giving out tissues for free. In Endgame, as the world deals with the loss of half of the population due to Thanos successfully snapping with the Infinity Gauntlet on, Tony creates a family he never thought he could have. Still, he never stops trying to find a way to go back and undo what Thanos has done. The team goes back in time and successfully acquires the Infinity Stones before Thanos, and the only thing left to do is snap. Tony is the one to do it, to snap Thanos out of existence, but unfortunately being human, the damage to his body was beyond repair. It was devastating to see a character we followed and loved for so long passed away. Even more painful to watch as his young daughter would have to go on without him. But it felt like the perfect ending to the narrative. I think it's important to honor a hero that was honorable and kind, not just in the MCU universe, but in ours as well. T'Challa the Black Panther, in Wakanda forever. About 2 years after Chadwick Boseman's sudden passing, his iconic character, T'Challa, was also laid to rest. Black Panther died of a mysterious ailment which reflected the actor's passing. Following an emotional funeral service, the story showed several times the effect T'Challa's death had on others. The movie's focus and portrayal of grief was therapeutic and guided viewers in their own feelings about Chadwick. And while the weight of his loss was always felt, the story ended with a symbol of hope. T'Challa's son. It showed that you can always find light and hope after grief. So, from loss and betrayal to the memory of the incredible characters they were, these are the saddest deaths in the Marvel Universe.